If you stood on the edge of this railway platform on any given morning, you'd be hit by the sheer noise of it all. Screeching brakes, shouting vendors, thousands of people rushing through the rain. And right in the middle of that chaos sat a golden brown dog, perfectly still. He always had a faded blue collar resting by his paws. Travelers would bend down to scratch his ears, and locals would toss him warm scraps of food, but he barely seemed to notice. His attention was entirely locked on the tracks. With every train that pulled under these massive iron arches, his eyes would scan the faces of the crowds pouring out, searching for one specific passenger who never disembarked. If you find yourself moved by the quiet power of an unbreakable bond, take a second to subscribe to the channel. To a passing stranger, his daily vigil looked completely irrational.
But true devotion often looks like stubborn obsession to anyone who doesn't know the story behind it. Years earlier, that dog, Bruno, was just a frightened puppy surviving on the streets. That is, until a local school teacher named Arjun found him, brought him home, and gave him that blue collar. They shared a very quiet, simple routine. Every evening, Bruno would wait by the front door. The sound of Arjun's footsteps returning from work was the single most important event in his day. To Bruno, that return meant his entire world was safe. But one rainy afternoon, that routine broke. Arjun received news that his father was severely ill. He packed a single bag and hurried to the station to catch a train out of the city. Before stepping onto the carriage, he knelt down on the wet platform, wrapped his arms around Bruno, and whispered a final instruction. "I'll come back soon, my friend." A dog doesn't understand changing circumstances or unforeseen emergencies. When Arjun gave his word, it became the only truth Bruno lived by. Arjun fully intended to keep that promise, but halfway to his hometown, he suffered a sudden, fatal heart attack. He never stepped off the train, and he never made it back home. The tragedy left the town in shock, but the hardest part was the communication barrier. There is simply no way to explain the concept of death to an animal. The locals tried their hardest to step in. They brought Bruno into their homes, gave him soft beds, and fed him. But every single morning, before the sun even came up, he would slip out the door and trot right back to his spot on the platform. 1 week of waiting slowly turned into months, and then years. The children who used to pet him grew into adults. Even the station itself went through a massive renovation, with its old red bricks covered in heavy steel scaffolding. The human world around him was rushing forward, constantly evolving. Yet Bruno remained entirely trapped in the amber of that one unfulfilled promise. Through those years, the station staff watched this routine play out, specifically veteran conductor Mr. Raman. He watched time take its physical toll. Bruno's coat turned gray, his walk became a limp, and his strength gave out. Seeing the dog's failing health one cold morning, the old conductor sat beside him, gently stroked his head, and quietly admitted, "You kept your promise. I only wish humans could keep theirs as faithfully." That evening, deep in the middle of winter, the final train of the schedule rolled into the station, casting long shadows across the snow. As the last few passengers hurried away, Bruno lifted his heavy head one last time. He searched the empty, quiet platform. And then, as a chill breeze swept through the station, he closed his eyes and peacefully let go. He had carried out his vigil to the very end. This was the honorable completion of his duty. His long watch was finally over. By the next morning, the entire town had gathered at the station. There were no loud speeches or grand ceremonies, just an overwhelming, shared silence. To honor his vigil, they built a small bronze statue right next to his wooden bench. They bolted a plaque to the stone beneath it with a simple message: "Loyalty doesn't count the days. It simply waits with love." Decades have passed since that day, but the story survives. Parents who grew up watching Bruno now point out the bronze statue to their own children as they wait for their trains. It proves that you don't need fame to leave a permanent mark on the world. Those who love with all their heart leave footprints that time cannot erase. The purest hearts often speak without words, which leaves a quiet question to ask yourself. If you were ever lucky enough to experience a bond